Bavaliam Cafad Cherry just a Clare Shiaght Laa. Mish Maralyn Crellin. I'm Maralyn Crellin and I'd like to welcome you to this programme Shiaght Laa. In Shiaght Laa this week, Yn Chruinnaght fast Jew, Sanach Cadjanain, Crevis Gulsanelian. In our usual way, what's happening in the island? We'll have an overview of at least some of the events that are taking place over the next week. Yn Chruinnaght fo red reach, but Yn Chruinnaght is underway again, and we hear about that and some of those taking part. This evening, Thursday the 25th of July at 7:30, the Glenfaber Chorale will be entertaining at the Yn Arts Centre as part of the Parish of Russian Summer Concerts. Admission is free and there'll be a retiring collection. The Isle of Man Arts Council Summer Concerts Art in the Arcade programme continues this evening as well, with a concert in the Villa Marina Arcade at 8 o'clock by the Crosby and District Silver Band. On Sunday afternoon, the 28th of July at 3 o'clock in the Villa Marina Arcade, the Arts Council presents the Blue Train Big Band. And from 1 till 2, there's a lunchtime concert on Wednesday the 31st of July when Chris Mannion will be playing the Villa Marina Arcade Wurlitzer. Trehug Mona Douglas and Chruinnaght de Bun Horsach, ons de cumma no emsharach, haia cumma ons main fower. De Jaru, fi ons a Shaachtan roche le ruggery Vona Douglas, and hawk du le jeg main fower. As savlain huggy and Chruinnaght de Bun, nike jeg treefeeders hawk jeg, va Mona ginuerd alia jea care fidu le ruggery. Niai, Yorish a tre shenje in vlain, va slya noil and len Sarah Sowry Hannah, as va len Sarah na skollen jint. As Mishen, son and vlain again, van Chruinnaght rekit ons Jerry Sowry. Skasol de herked et ul you slide a goil an onji. Och erin de vel len Sarah ek na skollen ons Shaachtan na ratchen TT, de Cleachtach tan de skollen ein chit gejerison and tower Shaachtan lurg na skollen how and Soston. As rishimidi blinten, va fisek na rekadrin, de rau and Chruinnaght gulek hummel tuden Shaachtan sjerry jay and imbach skull. As Mishen, harawe de kinjak jantach, de rekaden na fear inzi as na perchen, de royal an, deravan na skollen jint, ons main and Shaachtan shen. Rish na blinten sure high, tan vinge frau de hummel and Chruinnaght ons a Shaachtan, lurg den a len Sarah skolva an oil toshach. Na jai ta dolia don I on shore. Ta hús jane a fear inzi as na luchten tai, och tan a perchen goil an on Sheshachtan as podden and Cioli skull. Rechad a gola soul, holier as tan a len Sarah goil toshach. Crea beat an rechis, te jikin de bidolia den yak on de kinjach. Last time in Shiaght Laa, we had an overview by Joe Callister and Chloe Woolley of Yn Chruinnacht's organising committee of Yn Chruinnacht's Celtic Gathering 2024, which opened last Monday the 22nd of July and runs through to this coming Sunday the 28th of July. Let's find out about the programme from this evening, Thursday the 25th, through to the end.
From Ireland, we're honoured that we've got a big group called the Len Collective, and they're based around the Cobblestone pub, which is a pretty famous venue in Dublin. Irish singers, dancers and instrumentalists. They also speak Gaelic, so they're coming over with some dancers from Callister Laa, who will give some demonstrations and call some dancers and do some workshops for us. We've also got acts from Cornwall and Brittany. So from Cornwall, we've got Richard Thui, who's a lovely singer and fiddle player, and he's coming with some members of the Rowan Tree. And from Brittany, we've got a mother and daughter duo, Brigitte and Katell Kloareg, who are both fest-noz singers. And if you're not familiar with fest-noz, it's a type of Breton dancing. So they will be singing for dancing, but also telling some of the stories of Brittany through their song. And a folk duo called Tarmac, who are from Brighton but have Manx connections, so they're going to be appearing. We're very, very grateful to our sponsors. Each year we are very, very lucky that we've got Culture of Annan and the Isle of Man Arts Council. They've been long-term supporters of the festival. And we have also got a new sponsor on board for a couple of our events this year, Fynodry Distillery. Other events, we've had assistance from a digital group, IFGL, Malcolm Scott Dickinson Charitable Trust, the Soundcheck Charity. They're funding some educational workshops for us. And our Irish group, the Len Collective, are being sponsored by Culture Ireland. We've also had lots of help from other companies and organisations. We're very grateful to for Enterprise, Man Social, for the Domestic Fund, who are sponsoring our events down at Black Dog Pizza, where we've got live music. Peel Town Commissioners. Isle of Man Post Office have helped us with our printing. We've also had UNESCO Biosphere.
Yn Chruinnaght are a Biosphere partner, and we work hard to be as sustainable as possible. We always encourage people to bring water bottles along to refill. And they've very kindly sponsored our T-shirts and our reusable bags this year. So if you want to look out for their lovely UNESCO Biosphere logo.
Fynodry and Distillery are sponsoring our Celtic Seasons concert, Thursday the 25th of July in the Centunive Centre. And this is like an inter-Celtic variety show, and it's going to be narrated by our president, Bob Carswell, RBV, and it's going to take us through the year, through a medley of songs, poetry, dancing and instrumental numbers. Quite an interactive element to it, fun for all involved, whether they're on stage or in the audience. And it's just a lovely celebration of our past and present and calendar customs that we share amongst the Celtic countries. So, of course, this is a nice connection to Fynodry Distillery because they have their different seasons of gin. We will have projections of Julia Ashby-Smythe's lovely designs projected throughout.
So I see there's going to be some music as well in the White House. There'll be a session there on Thursday evening. So let's move on ahead now then to Friday the 26th of July.
During the lunch hours, the House of Manannan, we're going to have a workshop upstairs in the St Patrick's Suite. We're going to have a harp tunes workshop with Mira Royal.
Also this year, the Mega Manx Ceilidh is back. This year, however, very excitingly, it's being held in St Germans Cathedral in Peel. We're very pleased that Fynodry are sponsoring that night, so we've got some drinks on offer from them and some food from Philby's. And I think it's one of the first big events to be held in the cathedral, which is a beautiful space. We've been in, we've had plenty of room for dancing. And obviously the night focuses on dancing. So we've got the well-loved Mega Manx Ceilidh Band. We've got some dancers from Gina's Dance Academy, from Nefani, and Brigitte and Katell that Chloe mentioned before. They'll be leading some dancers, and our Irish visitors. And of course, Ellen Vannon Pipes and Drums will be playing us in. We've got our annual Saturday gathering, which takes place 11 till 4 in the grounds of the cathedral and Corran Hall, so that's free for families. And I think we said last year that as the date changed to be the first week of the summer holidays, it's much easier for families and children to attend, so that Saturday is always really successful.
We have a Scottish act closing the festival, and that is Duncan Chisholm. And he is one of Scotland's most established and revered fiddle players. And so he's going to come over to perform on Saturday the 27th. He's going to have accompaniment from Ross Ainsley and Hamish Napier. On the Saturday, we're having a masterclass at lunchtime with Duncan Chisholm for advanced violin players. But others who play other instruments can enjoy some Scottish tunes with Ross and Hamish. On the Saturday evening, before Duncan Chisholm plays, Katie Lawrence, she's going to be launching her first ever tune book and is bringing some friends on stage to perform some of her compositions, which is going to be very, very exciting.
Joe Callister and Chloe Woolley.
We've heard of Katie Lawrence's book launch and Duncan Chisholm with Hamish Napier and Ross Ainsley playing on the Saturday night, but there's an opportunity to wind down at the end of a busy week, and that'll be taking place at the Black Dog Oven on Sunday the 28th, and that'll be from 2 o'clock. There'll be music to join in with, Yn Chruinnaght Committee Band, and there'll also be Clash Boer and Salty Dogs playing. And that brings everything to an end on Sunday the 28th of July.
Breton mother and daughter Brigitte and Katell Kloareg sing songs from the Breton tradition, including the Canhadiscan style for Breton dancing.
I took the opportunity to talk to Brigitte and Katell, and first I asked Katell about education in the Breton language.
There
are several options. We have 3 different types of Breton language schools. We have Diwan, Diun and Juilliers. So we have total immersion, we have in Breton, or bilingual, which can be very different depending on the school that you're in. Some can be practically all in Breton and some have very, very little Breton. So, and then we have the religious Catholic schools that have a Breton option as well. So those are the 3 different types. There's more and more nursery and preschools in Breton as well, and more and more people going into the French schools and teaching songs in Breton and very, very basic, days of the week and counting and the colours and that kind of thing, and singing songs with the children. And then we have about 6 secondary schools and 2 sixth form.
D1 started really because there was no provision, no state provision. And when D1 started and was successful, the state then opened those bilingual schools. Now, the big failing of those schools, and although they did open schools in Breton, they're only at primary level. And some parents somehow don't seem to realize that when the kids get to secondary level, they usually are not good enough in Breton to then go into the immersion schools, which are run by associations. They're not state schools. The state is involved at some level. But the fact that there's no provision at secondary level really shows what the French government is up to, which is providing, paying lip service, basically, providing some education in Breton, but when things get a bit serious, like secondary school, there is no provision. And it's quite, I think it actually undermines the Breton language because people put their kids in there and then they're out of it because they're not good enough to carry on in Breton, and they basically have got most of them, unless there's Breton spoken at home, for instance, then they have to integrate an all-French state school.
And what about tertiary level, other courses in studying Breton?
It's quite easy to learn Breton as an adult. There are loads and loads of options. There is money available for that. I just completed a course and I got my top level in Breton because I had some money. I retired and I had some money left on my training, lifelong learning account. So I bought 30 days of Breton. So there is quite a lot of provision for that. And people do learn Breton that way as well.
And your own path to Breton wasn't a very straight line, the way you came to the Breton language.
Yeah, well, I was always interested in the language because I heard my great-grandparents speaking it a little bit when I was little. So I was totally aware that it existed. I sang in Breton before speaking the language. I heard mum singing in Breton and I heard people singing in Breton. And when I moved to Brittany in 1999, when I was 19, I went to go to art college, and art college didn't work out for me, and I was kind of a bit lost and I didn't know what to do. And I bumped into a friend of mine in a bar one day, and she said, "Learn Breton." And I was like, well, yes, that's what I've got to do. So I went and learnt Breton, 3 months course, and then I started working in a school. And well, I've just never looked back and just got better and better at it. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned moving back to Brittany, so what was that situation?
Well, we lived in Wales I lived in Wales for 19 years. I was born in Brittany, went back over because my parents lived there when I was 15 days old. I went back to Wales, lived there, most of my childhood, and then
And then when I was 19, I decided that I had to move back to Brittany before I settled down in Wales. I was like, right, I've got to go over there a bit, because I've just found culturally it was way more interesting at the time to me than Wales. Things were moving in Wales, but there wasn't this huge... It wasn't quite as developed as in Brittany. And when I was going over to Brittany, I was seeing all these young people interested in the music and the singing and the dancing. And in Wales, it was still a bit slow and timid. It's changed a lot since. And so I just thought, right, I've got to go. And then, well, 25 years later, I'm still there.
You mentioned, with regard to the Breton language, in fact, there are still dialects. So how strong are the different dialects, and is there much mutual intelligibility?
There are 4 dialects. 3 of them, we call them KLT. Those are the initials of the 3 areas, Kernay, Trégor, Léon. Now, those 3, we can basically understand one another, except if you get some really old speakers, really, who haven't been around very much. But basically, those 3 can be considered as, they will move towards one dialect eventually. They're close enough. Now, strangely enough, the one which is furthest away from Cornwall and Wales, the one in the south, it's the Morbihan, the county of Morbihan, and it's cut in 2, French-speaking on the east and Breton-speaking on the west. And it is really, really different. They don't put the emphasis on the same syllable, so that is always a little bit of a surprise to the other speakers. They've got different vocab, but the singing tradition is really beautiful. I mean, the others are as well, but really quite special and quite strong as well. And, there's no way that dialect is going to disappear or anything. I mean, people are, intent on keeping it. And I mean, I'm quite lucky because I live not too far from them, and I lived in that county as well. So I got used to it's just like, like when you understand, but not quite, and then the penny drops like 3 seconds later. So it is not different altogether, but different enough that you can really consider it a separate dialect.
Is Gallo still spoken?
Yes, but Gallo is not spoken very widely. I would say that it's like spoken in pockets where you get people with a common interest in the language who sort of gather. It is much harder in a way than Breton to keep going because it is closer to French and a bit like Scots. You'd have people speaking broad Scots or a version of Scots that English speakers can follow. So it's a bit like that. So it depends really who you meet, where you are. I go to events, especially storytelling is quite strong in Gallo. And so after going there regularly, I can sort of follow most of what's being said. It's close enough to French that you're not completely at sea, like with a Celtic language, which is totally different. So it is still going, and there certainly is an effort on the part of organisations I'm part of, for instance, or the Regional Council of Brittany, to actually include Gallo and say that, we have 3 languages, very much like Scotland. We have French, Gallo, and Breton. Now, Breton has been getting a lot of attention, and in Rennes University, for instance, you might have signs in French, in Breton, and in English. No Gallo there. So there's still a lot of things to get right.
Your repertoire, obviously, it's a family repertoire as well, but where did you get your repertoire from?
I think I started singing in Wales, really, as an aid to learning the language. And I was lucky enough to meet people who sang. So I learned a lot of Welsh songs at first. And then I lived in Wales. I moved to Wales when I was 1975, stepping into the shoes of somebody who got ill, who got a British Council grant to learn Welsh. So I learned Welsh. I didn't have Breton back home. Katell talked about a great-grandparent, so my grandparents spoke Breton together, but they were always, no, we're not going to speak to you in that language, learn English. So eventually I learned English, and I said, look, I speak English really well now, can I learn Breton? They said, look, we only see you twice a year, well, why do you want us to speak to you in a language you can't even understand? So I learned Welsh first, really. I'd struggled trying to learn a little bit of English. I mean, I started at 13 with a record and a book, not very successfully. And then once I had Welsh, I felt more at ease, really, having access to both cultures, which is something I didn't really get in Brittany. I was like very, I felt in a very French culture. And back in those days, like the 70s, like the kind of revival was just starting. So it was, D1 hadn't started. I'd moved to Wales, and I just thought Breton was just lost to me, really. So I stayed in Wales very happily, mixing with the dual cultures there. And, Katell said she moved back in 1999 to Brittany. I lost my job in Cardiff, so I also moved back to Brittany. And then I went on courses and learned Breton very easily then because of the Welsh. My teachers used to say, it's very disturbing. I can understand what you say, but you're not speaking Breton. I mixed the two languages for a good while, and it still happens sometimes. Like when I'm missing a word in Breton, I get the Welsh one coming in. And then the repertoire, then I spent a lot of time in Ireland. I think it's really Ireland that taught me how to sing as an unaccompanied singer. That's where I learned to sing. And then, I went back to Brittany regularly, and I really spent a lot of my time just going to listen to singers in the British Isles and in Brittany. Or further afield as well, Italy or, parts of France or the Basque Country or Catalonia or whatever. I mean, whatever they sing, that's fine.
Your own repertoire, apart from singing traditional styles, either unaccompanied or canadiscan, you also sing, now with your husband, he plays guitar.
With my husband, we basically do songs for children. Well, we have a repertoire of ballads as well, but we don't really do that very often. We go into schools and I teach children's songs and nursery rhymes to children in Breton, and in French a little bit as well, and in English. I have this that's what I'm known for, is for doing things in several languages, and getting children singing, because in French schools and Breton schools they don't sing that much. It's not like over here, there's music is not really taught, and so I get quite a lot of work going into schools, and I do singing walks and workshops and putting concerts together with the teachers and the children and with my husband. But he comes from more Latino music and jazz, so he has his own way of accompanying all that. He's not into it's really two worlds coming together. It's very different, and the way we see music and how to make music is very different. But it's interesting to put the two worlds together. But yeah, we work a lot. Yeah.
We're known for singing in several languages. Well, obviously, I'd learned Welsh, and I started to learn some Welsh songs. And then for performing, I started learning English songs. Now, French in Wales was very much a minority language, so I had to speak French to my children. And Breton was a little something I had, which I passed on whatever I could. And Katell was very receptive, but I did find that singing was really a good way to put the language into the children, in the sense that once they'd learned something by heart, and to this day, I mean, even your sister, who would be less at ease in Welsh than you, well, she still understands it because she just knows that many songs in Welsh. And I think singing is really so important in the case of minority languages, that it will go into the children's heart somewhere, and they will always have that feeling that it is home somewhere to them. And I think it's, in a given day, you can do a bit of singing, and then you're going to be speaking something else in the kitchen, and then you might be on the phone to somebody else in another language or something. But the singing is really very important. Storytelling would be equally important, to actually bed the languages into the kids.
But it's about connecting the language to a positive emotion. I think once you've done that, and a child has had a good time singing in the language, you've already opened a door, which is and it's not that difficult. I went into a French-speaking school last year, and I taught them Breton songs, and I went back this year, and they remembered the songs, and they had fun singing them. And I was like, and these children were in Brittany, and they knew not a word of Breton. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen that before. And they had a good time singing, and so they remembered it. And I just thought, well, that's just one little building block in this huge wall that we have to keep on building, And
we certainly saw that in the Isle of Man. We saw that, that bunch of women you have at the festival, I am so impressed. And then all these little girls flying around and starting songs and singing their hearts out. I was, my picture of the Isle of Man probably goes back 30 years. And honestly, the change that, my perception of it anyway, it's just a delight to be here.
Breton mother and daughter Brigitte and Katell Kloareg. On Saturday the 27th of July and Sunday the 28th, you can visit the Southern District Agricultural Show at Orrisdale Farm in Ballasalla, with 2 full days of wide-ranging entertainment, including the best livestock and equestrian events, dog agility and sheepdog displays, as well as dance and gymnastics in the main ring, and marquees of arts and crafts, fur and feather, and local food and drink. That's from 9:30 each morning. Saturday the 27th also sees the start of an exhibition running through to the 14th of August at the Grove Museum of Victorian Life in Ramsey. The exhibition is called Magical Worlds in Miniature, Doll's House Display. On Wednesday the 31st of July, the summer concert of St Thomas's Church in Douglas at 7:45 presents the choir Musicale, conducted by Judy Cross. It's free admission. The concert will be followed by refreshments and there'll be a retiring collection. A Shiaght Laa here. That's it from this edition of Shiaght Laa. So from me, Maralyn Crellin, sledding you.